Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jensen and welcome to Module 8, Terrorist Tactics Part 1. So we have two modules that show you tactics, which are essentially the methods of violence, the weaponry, and the strategies. So Part 1 of 2 is starting this week, so we're moving away from media and into tactics. And we're going to give you some recommendations on how to get into this material, but this module and the future module next tend to be really appealing to the students that are interested in law enforcement because they kind of get more into this type of thing. And it's been interesting to see how this has changed as well. So the photo on your module screen here is the first car bombing ever in the United States. So this was in the 1920s. They've been around for a long time. Yeah, it shows you some of the history of that. Even though terrorism has been around for centuries, the tactics or methods of the terrorists evolves over time. From hijackings to car bombs to multiple shooter attacks and suicide bombers, tactics has always been a critical means of evaluating potential threats. Whether we regulate bomb-making materials or put more security measures in place for water and waste system contaminants, we are always looking to stay 2 steps ahead of potential attacks. The weapons of choice for earlier terrorists were the dagger, the noose, the sword, and the poison elixir. The introduction of the hand-thrown bomb and the pistol, and more recently the machine gun and plastic explosives, enabled terrorists to kill much more efficiently. Now weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, or wholesale destruction allow terrorists to really leverage their personnel, as proved by the events of September 11, 2001, in which a relatively small number of highly trained individuals armed with primitive box cutters were prepared to give up their own lives and were able to use passenger jets as weapons of mass murder. So this week we will focus on the most common tactics, including improvised explosive devices, kidnappings, car-based attacks, and multiple shooter scenarios. So we're going to be able to construct a timeline to see how these different tactics have changed over time and why we are now starting to see a slip in those tactics as regulations have increased, as counterterrorism has grown and improved. We're seeing more low-tech attacks, especially in Europe and particularly in the UK. And so we're going to be able to determine where regulations are or are not successful in eliminating access to weapons, using checkpoints, or addressing vulnerabilities in public spaces. And again, as different targets change and have different things available to them, we'll see how this plays out. So in the Think About It tab, which terrorist targets do you believe lack security or have too much security, like stadiums, arenas, parks, pools, train stations, airports, shipyards, military bases, government buildings, private firms, college campuses, or movie theaters? So we have to ask ourselves what's public, what's private, and what are the expectations I have of being able to move freely through a space versus my privacy and my civil liberties and those kinds of things. And then we get also typically into a discussion of things like gun-free zones and concealed carry and any number of different things in that regard. As far as your readings are concerned, you will be reading Hoffman Chapter 8, just one chapter this time, The Modern Terrorist Mindset, Tactics, Targets, Tradecraft, and Technology. And then you have an article that starts to detail the history called From the Dagger to the Bomb by Grob Fitzgibbon. So these are our 2 tactical articles that will put this into place for us. Videos, we have our module overview, and then we have terrorist tactics, which I actually will go over briefly some of the main tactics seen today. And then we have tactics and country attacks over time, where I show you lots of data on how tactics have changed, and you'll want to definitely take notes during that video so that you can be prepared for your quiz, because I draw from a lot of that content. And then finally, you have a film this week because you don't have a ton of videos to watch. And this is called An American Terrorist, and it's a very comprehensive film on a more recent terrorist that was working in conjunction with parties in Pakistan. And I think you'll really enjoy it, and I also ask a few quiz questions about that, so you'll want to briefly take some notes as you watch. And it is a little over an hour and a half, so you want to plan for that in your week. As far as activities go, you just have a quiz on Module 8, And again, make sure you have your reading notes available for that, but a little bit, again, a lighter workload. And I try to make sure that when I ask a lot of reading or a lot of videos, I try to be more modest in my expectations with quizzes and assignments where I can, but I still need to be able to determine your mastery on the material. So that's all I can think of as far as doing Module 8 this week. If you do have questions, please reach out. I love hearing from you. We have such a dynamic class, such a great group of people this semester, and I really appreciate you going on this journey with me. But we'll see you next time.